Good morning. Happy Monday. I have been doing a lot of research on the Bane Act. I did a lot of research on Friday because I inherited a Bane Act case. And there's a difference between the small amount of research I did. Gosh, what was his name? SGVT or something like that. Was some guy in Southern California was going around filming, and every time a police officer told him to stop filming or anything like that, every time it was a Bane Act violation. This dude loves the Bane Act, and he thought everything was a Bane Act violation, and surprisingly enough, it's not. But there's a difference in the amount of research that I'm going to do to actually handle a case on the Bane Act, as opposed to the amount of research that I'm going to do, for example, a video that I'm going to do. So I started digging in on Friday. I only got a couple hours of research in, but I did find something. I stumbled across something that I thought was interesting. Around May of 2020, Zoe Perez, we all know her as Furry Potato. Hard to take someone seriously with the name Furry Potato. Anyway, she's suing that I'm going to screw up his last name. I don't remember. I'm going to call him Ed. She's suing Ed, the security guard, the one who shot her, whether it was by ricochet or not. He still shot her. She's suing him, and she also was suing the temple and the school in the temple and all those everybody else she could, right? Because that's what you do. As an attorney, you know that security guard isn't going to have any money, so you want to sue the people with the money. So in the lawsuit, she pled a bunch of different things, but she also pled a Bane Act violation. She's saying that the security guard used threats or intimidation or coercion to try to get her to stop filming. And she was right, but she also pled that he did it because of her protected status. And I thought, why would you have to do that? That's not part of the Bane Act. So I saw that there was an order that the judge had signed somewhere in May, I believe, May of 2020. So it's relatively recent. Judge signed this order, and it was basically the school and the temple were demurring to everything, and the judge granted their demurs on everything. And Ed demurred to, I think, 3 or 4 of the counts, and his were mostly, I think all but one of his were granted. But Ed did not demur to the Bane Act violation. But what was interesting about it, so she still got the security guard on the hook for a Bane Act violation and one other count, I think. Maybe 2. I don't remember, because I only really cared about the Bane Act violation. But what I found interesting in the Bane Act portion of the judge's order, the judge was examining it and said that a Bane Act violation required threats, coercion, or intimidation. And it also required that the person, the victim, has to be a member of a protected class or perceived as a member of a protected class. And I thought, wait, what? I thought that was really weird. So I started digging into it, and I actually started digging into it over the weekend, because it's not really part of what my particular Bane Act situation is. So I started digging into it over the weekend, and there was a case, Venegas versus the Orange County, Venegas v. Orange County, California Supreme Court case. California Supreme Court looked at this in 2004, because prior to this, all right, background. Let me give you a little background. The Bane Act is part of civil rights acts, like the UNRRA Act, and there's another act, starts with an R, I forget the name of it. But there's this this group of civil rights acts in and around the Bane Act, 51 of the Civil Code, all the way up to 20 or 5.22 of the Civil Code, 52.22 of the Civil Code, I think, or somewhere around in there. All deals with civil rights violations, basically where people take actions against you based on race, creed, color, religion, etc., sex, gender. But the Bane Act doesn't have any of that language in it. So when it was first enacted in the late 80s, the Bane Act was interpreted by the courts as being part of these other civil rights acts and required the same discrimination against a protected class or discrimination against someone who's perceived to be a part of a protected class. And the Supreme Court, the California Supreme Court, looked at this in 2004, and they said no. The language of the statute doesn't support that. The intent of the statute, there was a 2000 amendment to the statute that appears to be a response to Jones versus Kmart, which was a 1998 California Supreme Court ruling that appears to be supporting the interpretation that this is not just for civil rights violations based on a protected class or perceived membership in a protected class. So it really applies to anyone being denied a right under threats, intimidation, or coercion, and that right can be secured by state statute, federal statute, state constitution, federal constitution. I mean, it's really, really broad. It doesn't have to be a state actor. It can be a private actor. It is essentially a giant catch-all. It's pretty crazy. But then to have the court in Zoe's case come back and say that it requires a person to be part of a protected class is a little bit interesting. It caught me. So this weekend I delved back into it, and I think I found where it went sideways. In 2017, there was a case, Gabrielle A. versus Orange County, I believe. Maybe I'm mixing up who it was against, but I believe it was Gabrielle A. versus Orange County, where the court, basically as a throwaway line, said that the Bane Act requires the discrimination, or it requires discrimination based on a protected class or perceived membership in a protected class. Basically as a throwaway line, like it wasn't really part of their decision. They weren't really intending to dwell on that, but they relied on various case law that was prior to Venegas. They ignored Shonier, and they just threw it out there like it was just casual. And other courts have picked that up, and it seems interesting. It seems like we're going in a direction where there's case law being formed now to maneuver us back into having a requirement. And I'm not entirely sure how that's going to play out, because one would assume that a California Supreme Court decision would overturn or would overrule or would be precedential over a subsequent California Court of Appeals decision. And I looked into it. There wasn't any amendments that I could find to the Bane Act that support this. Other courts of appeal are still following Shonier and Venegas. So I'm not entirely sure what's going on, but it's an interesting little situation that apparently Zoe's judge thinks that there has to be discrimination based on a protected class or perceived membership in a protected class. That's just interesting to me, and it's a small world. So in case anybody's wondering if there's anything beyond that, no, that's just me finding an interesting trend in the law that I thought was interesting, and I figured I'd share with you, since maybe you know Zoe or follow her, or whatever. It didn't affect the outcome, by the way, just so you know. The outcome would be unaltered even if the judge hadn't phrased it that way. It's non-prejudicial error. So don't worry too much about that. I've also heard people talking about Earl's upcoming trial. I think his motions in limine are tomorrow, the 30th. I haven't checked them last week, so I don't know. I mean, they could have been pushed back further. But I just want everybody to remember that even though Earl's trial is upcoming, I would not expect it to be a one-day affair. Unless he pleads, in which case, obviously, it'll be much faster. But you've got stages to go through. I mean, you got voir dire. You're going to have the actual trial. Who knows how many witnesses they're going to call? I certainly don't know how many witnesses they're going to call. I would expect them to call at least 3 or 4. I mean, they've got the defense is probably going to call CPS agents and things like that. So I fancy it's going to, this trial, jury instruction, sentencing, all that other fun stuff. Well, actually, even before you get to sentencing, just the trial itself, I'd guess will take at least a week, probably 2 weeks. I doubt it'll take 3 weeks. It's long enough ago that I don't think you're going to have a bunch of witnesses. We got a helicopter circling low. They're coming for me. And there was one other thing that I wanted to discuss. One other thing, yeah. So I've talked a lot about the right being dead. I still maintain that the right is dead, not because there aren't people to the right of center, or of the current center, of the subjective center that we currently have. I mean, obviously Donald Trump is to the right of the subjective center because the left is screaming that he's Hitler. But the objective right, if you step back and you look at all the land the right has lost to the left, that's what I'm talking about. That right is dead. And I had a long discussion with OG2 on, I think it was Saturday, where we went over this, and I think we agreed on everything, but at the end he said he disagreed because he doesn't think the right is dead, but whatever. In that I started talking about some of my apprehensions about this upcoming presidential election, and that got me thinking about it. And I just want to caution everybody not to get too wound up. America keeps marching on. Every presidential election, one side or the other has thought that whatever president got elected was going to be the end of the world. I mean, in 2016, people thought that if Trump got elected, it would be the end of the world. And there was another group of people who thought that if Hillary Clinton was elected, it would be the end of the world. But Trump didn't end the world, and America actually was doing pretty well until the COVID thing came out. And I have a feeling, my gut instinct is the COVID thing, requiring people to stay inside and have no real purpose in their life, strongly led to what we're seeing with the BLM stuff, with the protests, because it gets people out of the house. It's something to do. It's something to allow them to vent their pent-up frustrations. But I don't think at the end of the day that whatever happens, whether we get Trump elected or Biden elected, I don't think it's going to change too much. The bureaucracy moves slowly in either direction. It does tend to move left. That's just the way bureaucracies tend to function, is they move left. But the bureaucracy responds slowly, and I don't think it's going to be the end of the world no matter who gets elected. I think we normally kind of course correct back to law and order, because society needs law and order. Businesses need law and order. Employees need law and order. You want to go buy food at the grocery store, you need law and order. So I don't want people to get too freaked out. I know Tim Pool, who has been forever a milquetoast centrist, they call him a fence sitter. He's talking about having bought a bunch of guns and emergency supplies, like 2 weeks or something like that, of emergency food. I don't think anybody, including Tim Pool, needs to go that far. Remember, we all surround ourselves in our echo chambers. We all do. Even Tim Pool, even I, we all surround ourselves in echo chambers. And by hearing and having reinforced all of these fears and concerns and problems over and over again, like if all you do is you watch these cop watching videos, you're going to eventually either really start hating the cops or really start hating the auditors, because it's just going to reinforce whatever belief you have, and it'll just continually be pounding it into your psyche. And right now there's people who are drinking the Kool-Aid on either side. It tends to be very polarizing. People are either drinking the Kool-Aid on the side of Law and Order or on the side of BLM, and it's going to color people's responses and people's ideas, and I want to be the voice of caution and moderation in this. And it's not as bad as you think it is. You'll get through it. America will get through it. We're going to be fine. We might do better with one president or the other, but either way, we'll be fine. Just relax. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.